team online. All right, today is Tuesday, March 15th, 2022, of a regular council meeting calling to order. And just notice to the public that the city council may vote to go into executive session for legal advice on any of the agendized items. Roll call, please.
Mayor Deasy.
Here.
Vice Mayor Daggett.
Here.
Councilmember Aslan.
Present.
Councilmember McCarthy.
I'm here.
Councilmember Salas.
Present.
Councilmember Shimoni.
Here.
Councilmember Sweet.
Here.
Thank you, City Clerk. And with that, Vice Mayor, would you please lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
I would be happy to. Thank you. Please stand. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. And Councilmember Aslan, our mission statement, please.
Mayor, the mission of the city of Flagstaff is to protect and enhance the quality of life for all.
Thank you. And Councilmember Shimoni, our land acknowledgement, please.
Thank you, Mayor. It'd be my pleasure. The Flagstaff City Council humbly acknowledges the ancestral homelands of this area's indigenous nations and original stewards. These lands, still inhabited by native descendants, border mountains sacred to indigenous peoples. We honor them, their legacies, their traditions, and their continued contributions. We celebrate their past, present, and future generations who will forever know this place as home.
Excellent. Thank you, Councilmember Shimoni. Brings us to agenda item 4, our public participation. Do we have anyone at this time, City Clerk?
No, Mayor, we do not.
All right. Well, that brings us to agenda item 5A for our proclamation on Colorectal Cancer Awareness Month. And we do have some representatives from NACA here. And if you would like to actually come up right now that you've just sat down, we'd love to present this to you. Thanks for being here. Good. Never know if people are good with shaking hands or not these days, but pleasure to see you. All right. Thank you, everyone. Colorectal cancer is the third most common cancer diagnosed in the United States among both men and women. The American Cancer Society estimates that there will be 106,180 new cases of colon cancer and 44,850 new rectal cancer cases within the United States for 2022. Less than half, 46.1%, of American Indian and Alaskan Natives aged 50 to 75 were up to date with colorectal cancer screening in 2018. The National Cancer Institute has developed a 7-year Cancer Moonshot Initiative to address the concerns of cancer through a 21st Century Cures Act passed by Congress in December 2016. This initiative, Native Americans for Community Action, University of Arizona's Cancer Center, have come together to develop a statewide campaign to increase colorectal cancer education and screening in order to nurture healthy lifestyles, behaviors among the AIAN population. And the importance of early detection and cancer prevention strategies such as improved diet, increased physical activity, and the use of established screening tests could alleviate additional cancer morbidity and mortality for all. Now, therefore, I, Paul Deasy, Mayor of the City of Flagstaff, do hereby proclaim the month of March 2022 to be Colorectal Cancer Awareness Month and commend its observance to all citizens. Thank you. Who gets to hold it?
Put it in the middle.
All right. All right. Make sure here. Yeah. Great.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for being here. Thank you. Yeah, he All right, that brings us to agenda item 6A. This is our COVID-19 update. If you'd like to take us away, Shannon.
Thank you, Mayor Deasy. Good afternoon, Mayor and City Council. Shannon Anderson, Deputy City Manager. Just trying to get the slideshow to come up here. Here we go. So today we'll have our dashboard update for you, as well as a discussion on the reentry plan. We'll go over the data from Coconino County Health and Human Services, Northern Arizona Healthcare, the Navajo Nation, and our Hopi tribe. Rose will also give us an Indigenous Nations update. Then we'll circle back to talk about social media sharing, just to give you an update on that item, and then move into discussion on our monitoring criteria and our reentry plan phases, leading up to a recommendation from city staff and the reentry plan. So when we're looking at our number of weekly cases, the number of new COVID cases for week ending March 5th was 112. This compares to what was previously 184 cases the week ending February 26th, but now at 186. When we look at the geographical area, Flagstaff continues to see lower numbers of COVID cases. We have a 13.4% positivity yield, which is the same as the previous weekly report. Our hospital admissions, we're staying fairly low when we look at this number. We have 10 for week ending March 5th compared to 9 the week ending February 26th. The age groups 65 and older and 20 to 44 are still the highest in hospitalization related to COVID-19. When we're looking at COVID-related deaths, this most recent report from March 5th showed 1 COVID-related death, and then it also reported 2 deaths for the week ending February 26, for a total of 3 new reports. When we're looking at our community transmission, the top of the screen where it talks about the 112 positive cases, the 79.2 rate per 100,000, the 5.2% positivity yield, as well as the 3.6% COVID-like illness. Those are the measurements that we've been looking at, or the criteria we've been looking at throughout the pandemic. The good news is all 3 of these measures have seen a reduction. The 79.2 is down from 130. The 5.2% positivity yield is down from 9.5%. And our 3.6% COVID-like illness is down from 5.2% the week prior. All very good news. When you drop down to the bottom portion of this screen, it talks about community levels. This is the new CDC measurement tool that has been provided, and we are looking at a medium community level. This is governed by the fact that we have fewer than 200 new cases, and we have a 10.6% of new COVID-19 admissions per 100,000, and they're looking at this over a 7-day total. When we're going to the next screen, this is the site that you can go on to that the CDC offers. You can do a check by county, so selecting Arizona and then Coconino County again tells us that we're at medium community level, and talks about what you should do in order to help keep yourself healthy while you're visiting here in Arizona and Coconino County. Community vaccination, 58.7% of our eligible population here in Coconino County are fully vaccinated. This is up just slightly from the previous weekly report at 78.6%. Moving on to our COVID variants, majority of these have stayed the same number of samples that we saw in our weekly report ending February 26th, except for Omicron. That has increased now to the 2,081 that you see on the screen. That's an increase of 341 new samples that had the Omicron variant. These are still February samples, So we've seen nothing new in March yet. So when we switch over to the Northern Arizona Healthcare Hospital Census for our Flagstaff Medical Center, we see that the number of positive COVID patients has decreased from 26 to the 15 that you see on the screen. The number of pending COVID patients has also decreased from 3 to 0. And our number of hospital beds has increased by 10 to an additional 11 for capacity. And our critical care capacity beds has decreased slightly from 13 to 10. And this data was a snapshot as of March 14th. So now I'm going to turn it over to Rose so she can go over our Indigenous Nations update.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Council and leadership and our public. My name is Rose Tohi. I'm coordinator for Indigenous Initiatives. And these are the stats for this past 14 days. So as you can see, the total tested increased by 6,411, and then negative cases as well has increased by 5,724. And then the positive cases have increased by 415. That is a good low number based on the last 14 days, which was 795. And then the recoveries are at 584, and that pretty much, sorry about that. And that is up from 1,581 from the last count. And then deaths are at 9, and the last time it was at 17 in those same 14 days. Go on to the next one. As far as Hopi Tribe is concerned, there are a little bit of changes in there as far as providing some data, but total cumulative positive is an increase of 48, which is at 2,609. And then the 14-day active cases are at 28, which is a huge decrease of 85. And then for the other three, there's no data available for that time period. Navajo Nation is at 43% of the 3,506 samples tested for Delta variant. Of those, there's 43%. And then of those, 42% are of Omicron. So that's why there's still that safer at home requirements are still there. And that includes all the mandatory masking regardless of vaccination. Public health emergency orders have been changed from back to orange status for schools effective March 11, and then orange status again for businesses that will continue. Health advisories that has been posted are for 24 communities which have high rate transmission, and then that is a decrease of 28. So that's good news. As far as the Hopi Tribe is concerned, they remain at phase 2 up to March 13th. I called their office today and they told me that that has been lifted. However, all the Hopi facilities still require masking, and any businesses or any place where people go or gather, if they require it, there's still masking in place. And then there was a good news for the Kikotsmavi convenience store is now open. And that's a big deal because it has been accomplished as a result of generating funds from the Kikotsmavi village store. So that's one of the good things that has in the economic development front. Thank you all, appreciate it.
Thank you, Rose. Okay. So for our social media sharing, we have 2 posts here just so you can see some of the information that the City of Flagstaff is pushing out into the community after shared by Coconino County Health and Human Services. I thought you would find the one on the left of the screen of interest. Given we've been talking about testing kits, this one is letting us know that your free at-home COVID-19 test, you can order your second round of those through the website address that's on that post, the www.covidtest.gov. So great news there. And then down at the bottom of the screen is just a reminder that there is testing information on the Coconino County Health and Human Services website. It not only includes the locations that are here in Flagstaff, but all throughout Coconino County, as well as the areas in which you can order, such as the covidtest.gov. So moving on to the city's monitoring criteria as well as our reentry plan, we thought it'd be good to kind of start with the basics and go from there since it's been a while since we've looked at the plan itself. So throughout the pandemic, the city has been using a set monitoring criteria in order to help us make decisions, as well as watching what the CDC is providing in the form of guidelines. And so what we've been looking at as an organization in order to determine where we go with our reentry plan is looking for a downward trajectory over 4 or more weeks, meaning that we're seeing our number of hospitalizations, our number of COVID-related deaths, and our number of new COVID cases go down. It also includes our demonstrated ability to follow CDC guidelines. I think that's probably become a lot easier now that the CDC has suggested that if you're in medium or low community levels, that you only will need to wear masks if you want to, as well as if your health suggests that you should. We've also seen some additional capacity in our local healthcare facility to deal with the seriously ill. And our number of critical care beds. And then lastly, our Coconino County Health and Human Services is still providing testing, monitoring, and contact tracing. So reentry plan, we are currently in phase 3. What phase 3 means is that most of our facilities are open to the public, but we may have limited services. Limited services can be in the form of what's available to the customer in person, or it could be the hours that particular building is open. We will conduct our meetings remotely. As we know, with council, we've moved to a hybrid, but that is currently the only public meeting that we are conducting in that fashion. Our seating areas have been closed, and that's just to discourage congregating. We've asked for our members of the public to come in to conduct their business and then to allow for us to help the next customer. We have had protective measures in place, so that's the plexiglass at customer service counters. We've had the spacing that is available on the floor so that folks have been keeping their distance. We've also identified the ways in which folks come into the building and exit the building. So there's one entrance door, one exit door. Those are some of the measures we've had in place for quite some time now. Again, we're continuing to emphasize that our employees work remotely. Our indoor recreation facilities began staged opening and have continued that based on our downward trends. Our special events and our permits became less limited. And travel, although it's still limited to where we're asking folks not to go to locations where there's moderate or high risk of COVID exposure, they could go if it was for critical infrastructure. So when you move on then into phase 4 of the city's reentry plan, most of our city facilities would return to pre-COVID business hours and operations. Our required use of PPE would be phased out in accordance with applicable CDC guidelines. We kind of touched on this during our last COVID update because we did see the update from the CDC on the community levels, and we fall in that medium level here in Flagstaff. Our city council, our intergovernmental, and our boards and commissions, those groups can return to in-person and or hybrid meeting formats, whichever works best for them. And we'll continue to explore remote meetings and virtual work to pursue the efficiency and the productivity that we've experienced over the last couple of years. I don't know about you, but it's a lot easier to get from meeting to meeting when all you have to do is click on a button versus to run to a different building or maybe up or downstairs. And then lastly on this screen, we think it's important and it's included in our plan that we would monitor COVID conditions. And certainly if we're seeing any changes, we would take appropriate steps to mitigate the spread of COVID. Oops. So our reopening of city facilities, what we'd like to present to council for your consideration is that effective Monday, April 11th, we would move into phase 4 of the city's reentry plan. It gives us an opportunity to get staffing in place. We've been struggling in some areas to hire staffing, and we want to be sure that if we're opening for full hours to the public that we have the staff available. I've heard that we've got some recruitments currently underway, and in cases where we do not believe that we'll be able to hire the individual by the time we reopen, at least gives us the opportunity to figure out how we can fill that vacancy either through temporary staff or another member of Team Flagstaff coming over and helping out. So that gives us time to get the appropriate staffing levels in place. It also gives us an opportunity to monitor any changes in COVID transmission. As we touched on earlier, we've removed mask encouragement just over the last couple of weeks, and so wanting to watch to be sure that our numbers continue to trend downward. We wanted to bring forward that we would encourage hybrid meetings where feasible, given the flexibility that we've seen to benefit participants. I know in boards and commissions, they've shared that it's allowed them to reach quorum more often, and so we think it's a good thing to continue working on. We also are working on updating remote work policies. These are policies that we currently have in place, but wanted to update them to match today's business need. So we've been working on that for the last couple of months. We'll be coming to council once it's ready to go. We would also recommend that the travel and event restrictions that you see in previous sections of the reentry plan be lifted. So with your approval, that means in phase 4 that we would let folks know that travel restrictions for city staff and our city council or our city officials would no longer be in place, and that event restrictions would return to pre-COVID. So now I'm going to turn it over to Rebecca Sears, our Director of PROS, Parks, Recreation, Open Space, and Events, and she's going to give us a recreation update.
Hello, everyone. Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. So yeah, exciting news to be talking about moving forward in this reentry plan. It's been a long haul. But for our recreation facilities, an update, and then our plan for April 11th, if that's the direction the council goes. So right now, currently, our Josie Montoya Community and Senior Center is open to the public. We reopened at the beginning of March once numbers had fallen. And we did just receive word from Coconino County that they would like to start bringing the congregate meal program back indoors starting at the end of this month, March 28th. So we're pretty excited for that. We have talked with our staff and they do probably plan to continue wearing masks in that facility when they're working directly with patrons of that age group. At our Hal Jensen Recreation Facility, we are currently open Monday through Friday, 10 a.m. to 7 p.m. We are evaluating, which is pretty much fully open. We have no capacity restrictions or anything. We used to, pre-COVID, we were open on Saturdays. And so we are evaluating that cost benefit. It was usually a really slow day. We haven't had a lot of requests to open on Saturday. So we're evaluating that based on previous participation and seeing what the need is in the community and what our cost would be and what our staffing needs would be, and if we can get those staff on board. J Lively Activity Center is also fully open. We increased those capacity limits back up also at the beginning of this month when numbers really started coming back down. So we're pretty much at full operation there. And then at the Aquaplex, our hours right now are Monday through Saturday, 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. Our capacities increased there also at the beginning or at the end of February, apologies. So we're almost back to normal. We do still have quite a few areas that are closed. The kids club is still closed and will likely remain closed because of staffing issues. But what we're looking at on this April 11th date would be increasing our hours to 6 a.m. to 8 p.m. That would be Monday through Saturday. So almost back to pre-COVID hours. We used to be open on Sundays from 10 to 6, and we used to be open Monday through Saturday until 9 p.m. Both of those times were usually very, very slow. And the Aquaplex is a pretty high staff intensive facility to just open the doors to the public. So we're also reevaluating those needs and what the staff and other costs would be, and looking at that community benefit. So stay tuned. Did just want to let the council know we are planning our annual cleaning closure. This is when we usually close the Aquaplex for about a week. That allows us to do deep cleaning and things like draining the pool and some pool maintenance that are hard to do when we're open and the public is around. That will be April 4th through 9th. So it lines up nicely with this reopening date of April 11th, and we can be back to almost completely full pre-COVID capacities and hours. And with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions if you have them.
Thank you, Rebecca. Any questions, council? I am not seeing any, so thank you.
Thank you, Rebecca, for that update. I'm going to now turn it over to Jared Tolman, the Library District Director. Jared?
Oh, Jared, you are on mute.
Let's see, can you hear me now?
Yep, we're good.
All right. Good evening, Mayor, Vice Mayor, and Council. Jared Tolman here, your City and County Library Director. With this April date, the changes that would come to the library would be our library conference and community rooms would again be available to the public for use. We would also begin holding indoor programs in those in that community room as well as we have done in the past. Additional seating would be added to the library. Currently, we have limited the amount of seating that's in the library, and again, we would bring that closer up to the full capacity that we've had in the past. The plastic barriers between staff and patrons would remain for the time being. And for our East Flag Library, the operating hours would return to the full 65 hours of operations. So that would be 9 o'clock to 8 o'clock Monday through Thursday, 9 o'clock to 6 o'clock on Friday, 9 to 1 o'clock on Saturday, and 9 o'clock to 5 o'clock on Sunday. For the main library, those hours would increase as well. It would be 9 o'clock to 8 o'clock Monday through Thursday, and 9 o'clock through 6 o'clock on Friday. Regarding the weekend hours, however, for the main library, I will remind Council that we are in the process of moving towards our front entrance renovation. We're changing the front of the library entrance to be more ADA compliant. Currently it is not. Our ADA ramp is too steep, and so we are moving forward with that project. We have begun the JOC process and put that project out for bid. As long as that project moves forward through the JOC process, the construction of that project will begin in April. And to keep that project on schedule and be able to affect places like the very front entrance right at the front doors of the library, we have guaranteed that until Memorial Day, the construction groups will be able to work on that over the weekend. So we would not be providing weekend hours just yet if that JOC process moves forward. The weekend hours would not come until after Memorial Day. If that JOC process does fall through and it doesn't work out, we would be moving to a hard bid process. And in that event, probably the construction work would begin in July or August, at which point we would then cut those weekend hours to facilitate that construction project. If that is the case, that the construction project does get pushed back to later in the year, the Saturday hours that we would be opening with after April 11th would be 9 to 5 on Saturday and 9 to 1 on Sunday at the main library. Questions with that?
I'm not seeing any this time. Thanks for the update.
Thank you, Jared, for your presentation. So Mayor and Council, that is what the information that we have for you today, the data dashboard update, as well as the monitoring criteria, a review of the reentry plan information. Before you on this screen are the recommendations that staff are presenting for council consideration. We're here, obviously, if you have any questions or you'd like some additional information.
Thank you, Deputy City Manager. Council, any questions, comments? Councilmember McCarthy.
I support the staff recommendation to going to phase 4.
Thank you. Councilmember Aslan.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, I really appreciate you guys coming up with these recommendations. It's really nice to be able to bounce off of something that exists and not have to sort of toil around coming up with some of these specifics. And I am fine with the recommendations as presented. I say we should move forward, and it's a very exciting time that we're facing. Again, I think we need to be nimble with the coronavirus. I know there's a new wave going through Europe right now, trying to keep a close eye on that. And these are just dynamics that I think we're going to be dealing with for a while yet to come. And, you know, I need to correct something that was said a couple weeks ago. I think I was construed as saying that the pandemic is over. I never said that. I certainly don't think that. I do think we are coming out of the public health crisis phase of the pandemic. And we may need to move back into it at some point. But for now, I am very appreciative of these recommendations and very enthusiastic about moving back to phase 4.
Thank you, Councilmember Aslan. Councilmember Shimoni.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Deputy City Manager Anderson, and the entire team that's worked on this. I, too, am very excited about these recommendations and support them. Deputy City Manager, my only question is in regards to our commissions. Is there a chance that, you know, this might be a Stacy Fobar question, but is there a chance that that might be good to go as of the 1st of April, or do we need that additional time?
Thanks for that question, Councilmember Shimoni. I know Stacy Salzberg helped us through that conversation this morning. I don't know, Stacy, if you want to weigh in on that, or I'm happy to revisit the reentry team conversation as well.
Thank you, Shannon, and thank you, Councilmember Shimoni, for the question. I don't believe that we are going to be ready at the beginning of April to move those commission meetings over. And the reason I say that is there's going to be some training involved as we kind of transition into the hybrid setting for those meetings. So it's not a super easy flip of the switch, if you will, and we just need to make sure that there's appropriate time for our liaisons to be fully trained and comfortable with the equipment as we move forward.
Totally, and that makes sense, and I fully support that. That was my only comment. I appreciate Councilmember Aslan's comments about the wave that we're watching overseas that's likely to come to here next. but I do also feel like we're at a turning point, and I feel comfortable with these recommendations. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Shimoni. I just want to note one thing in our chat box, Director Helmick of the airport, that the public should understand that the airport is required to follow the federal mask mandate. So our airport facility is separate from our other facilities. Any other questions, comment? Oh, Vice Mayor Daggett.
Thank you, Mayor. And thank you, staff. I echo everything that my colleagues have said. I appreciate the way you all have handled this, and I am in support of your recommendations.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. Councilmember Sweet.
I too am in support. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Shimoni has another question.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. Quick question. Director Sayers, can you speak to the adjustments that have been made, if any, in regards to the masking requirements at J. Lively? You might have already mentioned it, but I might have missed it.
Yeah, masks are no longer required at any city facilities, including our recreation centers.
Very good. Thank you very much.
Thank you. A couple questions and comments. Deputy City Manager, as we see the Omicron BA.2 variant, that is sweeping Europe right now, and as of last week, it was only in 27 states. I'm just wondering if we can get the data separated on the Omicron, of which is the standard variant versus the BA.2 in the future, by chance, on the slides regarding what the type of variant we're looking at, because that would be good information if possible.
I certainly can ask that of Coconino County Health and Human Services, Mayor.
Thank you. And then the other thing I wanted to ask was, do we have the N95s available on request at our city facilities yet?
So I've received the company that we order them from. I still need to place that order.
Okay, thank you. As we reopen, I just want to make sure that everyone feels comfortable in our facilities, however, whatever level of comfortability they have with or without masks protection.
Absolutely. We still have the surgical masks. I just still need to order the N95s.
Okay, thank you. All right, anything else, council? I'm not seeing anything, so thank you, team, for the COVID update. We're down to agenda item 7, which is our council liaison reports. And I guess I'll start over here with Councilmember Aslan.
Thanks. Nothing right now.
Thank you. Councilmember Shimoni.
We had a state lobbying trip today. I'm not sure this falls within the liaison report, Mayor. Does it?
I think we should save that for the to from at the end of the meeting.
Okay.
Yeah, just specifically count the liaison reports.
Then I believe I am actually good for this week. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Vice Mayor?
Nothing from me, thank you.
All right, Councilmember McCarthy.
Nothing right now, thanks.
Councilmember Sweet.
I attended the BPAC meeting and we talked about the Arizona Murals Initiative, which I'll have some more information soon. Pretty cool project if you love public art like I do. We discussed the regional plan and capital projects along with the budget. It was a very informative meeting. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Salas.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I attended the Economic Collaborative of Northern Arizona, ECONA, Executive Board meeting last week. We are joined by Camp Verde and the City of Sedona as part of the consortium of government entities to be part of this regional economic development collaborative. And we are attracting business interests not only for Flagstaff but throughout the region in terms of interest in setting up shop in Flagstaff and the region for business attraction and business expansion. So good luck. Oh, and we also welcome the new chair, Josh Mayer, will be taking over the position of chair of the board, and longtime chairman of the board, former Mayor Chris Bevesi, will continue with the board as our emeritus board member. Good stuff going for the region in terms of economic development. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you, Councilmember Salas. Just before this meeting was in the Diversity Awareness Commission, where we discussed the upcoming proclamations for May of mental health awareness, as well as Asian American and Pacific Islander. We got some great presentations from the Jen Ortega, our Climate Engagement Coordinator, on ways that the Diversity Awareness Commission can be involved in our climate action plans. And also received a good update from David Wessel of our Metro Plan Planning Manager. And then I had to step out for this meeting, but also on the agenda was the equitable restroom recommendation and setting up a working group for the municipal quality index that us as council directed to have them start looking at and evaluating and giving recommendations. So that's what I got for us. With that, we are down to agenda item 8, which is our consent items. And I would like to pull out agenda item 8E, but before we start that, I want to, I move to approve consent items 8A, B, C, and D as written, unless there is one of those that you would also like to pull out. So the 8E, just the public knows, is the consideration and approval of a letter, notice of interest and participation of bipartisan legislation for rural water development. Aside from that, there's a motion on the table.
So I second the motion to approve A through D.
Seconded by Councilmember McCarthy. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? That motion carries unanimously. With that, we are moving to the agenda item 8E, the consideration and approval of letter, notice of interest and participation of bipartisan legislation for rural water development. And we do have some public participants here, so I think we should start with that unless there's some presentation and expectation that the staff had not.
Thank you, Mayor, Council. We do have some presentation that Aaron was kind enough to put together to help frame
Excellent.
the discussion, if that helps. I think there are some folks online who can also participate. We can just make introductions, go through a quick presentation, and turn it over to public comment. We're at your pleasure.
That would be great. Yeah, I didn't know if there was a presentation available, so I appreciate you doing that, Aaron. And then we can take the public participations and public participants after that.
Not on. Here we go. Good afternoon, Mayor, Vice Mayor, and council members. Erin Young, Water Resources Manager. Pertaining to the letter in front of you tonight, or this afternoon, I would like to explain a little bit about why we have a letter in front of you, a little history on that, and then a bit about the process and all that the process of going through technical assistance affords on this topic and learning more about alternatives to Red Gap Ranch as well. I would like to acknowledge that we have some folks online. We have Mr. Kevin Black. He is the, oh dear, Regional District, oh dear. Hi, Kevin, would you mind introducing yourself?
Hello, Mayor Deasy, Vice Mayor Dag, and members council. Aaron, my name's Kevin Black. I'm the planning program manager. I supervise the program development division for the Bureau of Reclamation's Phoenix area office.
Thank you, Kevin. I wrote down your title and then forgot my notebook. We also have Mr. Brad Hill online. As you know, he was our director for many years and has a lot of history on these projects that he might be able to help us with any questions that come up. So a little bit of about the letter of interest and what sparked it. As you know, we're going through a feasibility study for Red Gap Ranch with Jacobs Engineering. It's been many, many years, I think since 2009. We're trying to finish that project up. Part of that is public outreach. The Jacobs Engineering Study is designed such that if federal funds were to become available for construction of a project, we want the work the city is doing to align with the federal requirements under reclamation. The first step of that would be a feasibility study conducted by reclamation. Because public outreach is one of the last steps for the city's feasibility study, we were like, okay, it's time to talk to reclamation about that process. So we contacted Mr. Black, and he said, this is great timing. We have dollars for Western water infrastructure. We have dollars for rural water supply planning. Let's talk. What we need in order to execute technical assistance to the city of Flagstaff is a letter of interest. And I was like, I can do a letter very quickly. That's better than a grant application. So I put together a letter. And that's why you have this letter in front of you. And now I'd like to talk through all the components involved once we give our interest letter to the Bureau of Reclamation. It sparks a whole process where they sit down with us. They talk about our water supply needs, including aging infrastructure, water efficiency projects, water planning efforts, water conservation efforts. If we were to do a Red Gap Ranch type project, they don't just do this because we tell them we need the water supply. They do this through a whole process of evaluating alternative water supplies and such. And so that's sort of this umbrella part of executing this work with the Bureau. They'll review completed work to date. That includes the Red Gap Ranch feasibility studies, other studies we've done on Red Gap Ranch. I have a slide that contains all of those, as well as water reuse studies we've done. We've done many of those. I have a slide that lists all those. And they identify data gaps. One of those gaps is likely a water resources master plan, which I have funding for in this fiscal year. But I want to do that master planning effort with the Bureau at the table so that it aligns with their technical specifications that it can fold into a feasibility study, if that kind of helps. So the second bullet there is to define a scope of work for each project and an appropriate path to get all the components together that equal enough to execute like a feasibility study. So those might be water smart grants, which there are a ton. They're gonna help us with a pathway for, hey, apply for this grant. You've got this funding that can match to that work. There are so many opportunities that they're actually gonna help us navigate how to apply for what is a lot of money on the table. That helps us meet a lot of our priorities right now. Aging infrastructure, wastewater needs, getting to direct potable reuse if that ends up being a goal, Red Gap Ranch, et cetera. So we will work through the City of Flagstaff Water Commission for endorsement of any grant funding we're applying for, or if we're entering an authorization with the Bureau of Reclamation, that goes to City Council ultimately for approval. So that was kind of the background. I just wanted to provide, hoping that it helps you with the intent of the letter, and that kind of, it gets us our foot in the door to have these conversations, and it allows the Bureau of Reclamation some stake that City Council does wish to open technical assistance with Bureau of Reclamation. So it's an invitation. We have Kevin Black, as you know, is on the phone or on Teams. Kevin, if you would like to weigh in, I welcome you to do so, and Mr. Hill as well.
Thank you, Aaron. Mayor, members of council, again, thanks for the opportunity to join you today. We've had a number of discussions over the past month or so, understanding the future needs of the city and how those might fit within the Bureau of Reclamation's program development, grants, and other funding opportunities. We have worked with Northeastern Arizona extensively through the years. I personally worked with City of Flag probably back in the late 90s, looking at regional water supply opportunities and alternatives. Fast forward, there's much focus around advanced water treatment, utilization of wastewater, groundwater storage and recovery, a whole gamut of rural water development options. So this slide, if you all are seeing it here, is kind of a game changer with regard to Congress's act, the bipartisan infrastructure law, which allocated a substantial amount of funding to the Bureau of Reclamation. Many other agencies were able to get this type of funding as well. So Reclamation's funding is allocated within this particular distribution right now. As you can see on the right, there's still quite a bit of impending notices to come out in fiscal 22. The middle column, you can see that there are a number of internal formulation activities still going on. And that is in part due to the fact that we are today, as we speak, under a continuing resolution. We do not have our 2022 budget. At the point at which our budget is signed by the president, which has been delivered to the president's desk, the formulation of details around all of these subsets of the BIL funding will become known. And we would very much appreciate getting to work with staff at Flagstaff to understand how these might be applied. I can answer any questions that you might have, but this slide presentation has a number of details in it. Maybe if you can advance through these slides, Aaron, some of this will be, you have a number of details in here about the infrastructure funding, how they can be applied. I think given the opportunity to work with staff and become educated about what the city of Flagstaff has already done, what the plans are for the future, as Aaron indicated, we would work to be able to direct some of the submittals, help formulate proposals, and kind of create a roadmap. So wastewater treatment, reuse, rural water, any of the various items that are associated with conservation, many of these fit right within the Bureau of Reclamation programs. So again, I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have about some of the information.
Thank you, Mr. Black. I appreciate you taking the time to meet with us today. Mr. Hill, would you like to add a few words or?
I would. Thank you, Mayor, Council. Brad Hill, as Aaron introduced me. It's an honor and a pleasure to have the opportunity to speak before you once again. As she mentioned, not only am I retired as the former Water Services Director, but the City Water Services has hired me back to advise them on a variety of topics, which is one of the reasons why I'm here, that include hydrology, water resources, and wastewater management. So what I wanted to share with you all is I'm going to build a little bit on what Aaron had to say. And in particular, I thought council and the public might like to hear about some of the common steps that communities take when evaluating future water supplies, and the city of Flagstaff is no different, because it'll relate directly to this letter. So we don't, and I'm not sure that these have actually been articulated recently in the public, so if I'd just like to take a very brief moment and speak about their highlights to you. They're often just a set of prescriptive steps that communities take. And in particular, they're very simple. So once a community identifies potential water supplies, such Flagstaff has, whether it's Red Gap, direct potable reuse, DPR, or something different, the next one is important, and that's where the city staff is today. And that is to be conducting due diligence on each water supply. And what I mean by that is to get a better understanding of the details such as defining baseline engineering designs or regulatory limitations, anticipated capital, operation and maintenance costs, and things of like that. And then what hasn't happened yet, but will in the future, and that is when the city will collect all of that information. And when it's at an equal level between each of the supplies, because it's really at that point where the public, the staff, the city, the council can all begin in a public forum to evaluate each of those supplies on an equal footing, meaning a head-to-head comparison. Without having all of that information developed, it's really not appropriate to talk to say one versus another, at least from the staff's perspective. And so those are kind of the things that I want to share. Erin mentioned that she has funding for a water resource master plan this year. And that's good because that's commonly how communities do that. Once you get all the information, you put that into that master plan, and then you begin to entertain the public comment on what supply is what path does the community want to take. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Hill. With that, I think we should take public participation, and then we will circle back for questions and discussion from council. Thank you. All right. We have Robert Vane.
I'll unmask for this. Good afternoon, Mayor Deasy and council members. My name is Rob Vane, and I'm speaking on behalf of the Flagstaff Water Group. You're likely aware that the Water Group has expressed doubts about the wisdom of developing Red Gap Ranch for Flagstaff water, especially when we believe there are better alternatives. Our concerns are largely based on Red Gap Ranch's energy intensity, the huge upfront capital cost that can't be easily phased into small bites, and the fact that it does nothing to address human and environmental health concerns about synthetic chemical contaminants. The recent incorporation of renewable energy in the project is a nice addition, but renewable energy shouldn't be squandered on pumping water uphill that doesn't need to be pumped uphill. However, today is not a day for a final decision, but is a single step in the process to prepare for an important future decision that you are going to be involved in. Within 2 to 3 years, Council will be asked to sign off on design direction for a new wastewater treatment plant that Water Services says we need in 7 years. Given the minimum 30-year life of such facilities, that will set Flagstaff's water direction for decades to come. So far, Flagstaff has spent millions of dollars in studying Red Gap Ranch water supply options and a relative pittance on the reuse options of indirect and direct potable reuse. We have been assured in meetings with the Water Services Director and City Manager that city staff has not prioritized Red Gap Ranch and remains open-minded about all options. However, this is belied by the time, money, and management attention on Red Gap Ranch, as well as the so-called white paper that was posted in conjunction with this agenda item. Why does all of this matter? Unless this one-sided approach is changed, the result will be a poor quality decision in 2 to 3 years, for you will only have one viable option before you, and the decision will be made by default. We recommend that Council insists that staff pursues a balanced set of studies of water reuse options to complement more than a decade of Red Gap Ranch studies. As part of this effort and the educational effort, we urge you to send Andy Bertelson and Jim Huckel to Scottsdale and El Paso, Texas, to learn about the water reuse projects there. Everyone already knows what pumps and pipes look like. Not everybody does know what advanced water treatment looks like. In conclusion, thank you for supporting the need for a balanced investigation to ensure a quality decision in 2 to 3 years for Flagstaff's water future. Thank you.
Thank you, Rob. Yeah, Councilman McCarthy has a question for you.
A couple questions. Is Scottsdale doing direct potable reuse?
They are doing I guess they probably have their own term for it, but it's a demonstration facility, very low volume, but they're doing beverage sampling projects and so forth so that the public can see a DPR type of process in action and begin to get comfortable with the process and the products that come from that process. So in suggesting that Andy and Jim see that, it's not so much as to see a huge facility in operation, but to see what a demonstration facility looks like and get develop some confidence that it can be done. Scottsdale also does other indirect reuse projects in terms of aquifer recharge, in which they're almost getting to the potable stage as well. So there's lots to be seen in Scottsdale.
I see Aaron is, let me ask one more question, and then Aaron may want to come
Sure.
up to supplement your answer.
Sure.
It seems that you and your water group have spent a lot of time talking about these issues qualitatively. And so my question is quantitatively, and this might be better answered by Aaron. Assuming for the sake of discussion, we could use direct potable water reuse, how far would that get us towards the quantity of water that we will be needing? I mean, is it in the same ballpark, or is it 10% of it, or?
Well, I'd give a few answers to that. First of all, a 3-minute presentation doesn't lend itself to a full quantitative discussion, and that, of course, is absolutely needed. The percent you recover does depend on the process, and also depends on dewatering the solids and so forth. So you will get back some percentage of what goes in, and we've seen a range 60 to 90%, again, depending on the process. So in total, the water reuse projects of the type we're proposing that the city take a careful look at cannot meet, the total volume that's available from Red Gap Ranch. But that may in fact not be the key question. The key question is, what do you do first? And we think the more responsible process is to start reusing what you've already got, rather than, and again, depending on ultimate build out of the city of Flagstaff, to be honest, that may be enough. But if it isn't enough, Red Gap Ranch is still there as an insurance policy. But I think we would say, you don't take the biggest, highest cost option first that solves almost no other problems. Instead, we think you should take the lower cost, smaller step that solves more problems in terms of contamination issues, and we see how far we can go with it. Western society, we've seen in the past 100 years, has the standard approach is, let's drill more, let's pump more, let's use more, let's consume more, let's build more pipelines, and so forth. And this is a suggestion that, gee, there's another way. It may or may not solve all of our needs, but it's, most of us see think we see the writing on the wall in the arid Southwest that our aquifer isn't going to get any bigger with the kind of drought conditions we have, and we ought to reduce the net withdrawals we take out of the aquifer. Reuse does that. Pumping more from Red Gap Ranch does not do that.
All right, thank you, Robert, I appreciate it. And then staff may want to supplement my questions either tonight or at some future point.
Yeah, at invitation, we'd be happy to come back with a more quantitative presentation. Thank you.
Thank you. Do you want to come up, Aaron, and say anything on that front, or?
Thank you, Mayor. And Councilmember McCarthy, I just wanted to add something to what Rob said. And Rob was correct that Scottsdale has a demonstration facility. And I just wanted to add that they already had advanced treatment, reverse osmosis, so it was pretty cheap for them to add on this demonstration process. And we thank them for that, because they got the first permit through the Arizona Department of Environmental Quality, who still has no permitting process or rules. So they're really looking to the leadership of Scottsdale for opening the door and helping ADQ develop those rules. You can go tour the facility. I'd be glad to help organize that. And just a reminder that no DPR facilities are being implemented for water quality concerns. It is a water supply issue. Scottsdale's advanced treatment facility was actually built for the Gulf industry and reducing TDS 20, 30 years ago. On how the percent that DPR can get us towards meeting our water demands, today we have about 3,500 to 4,000 acre feet in a year. That is water we're releasing to the Rio de Flag that doesn't go to a water management benefit. So most of that flows to Doney Park. Red Gap Ranch is a 12,000 acre foot permitted supply. There could be an opportunity for 16,000 acre feet through a pipeline that would serve the region. We might not build bigger first, but if it has multiple benefits to the region, regional partners that are helping fund the project, that might be an opportunity that we wouldn't want to miss because we get the water supply cheaper, the pipeline, the infrastructure cheaper than we would if we waited to do it on our own. So those are the kinds of benefits that we'll learn about through this process and what Reclamation is really good at. Bringing together partners and stakeholders. They've done tons of these projects. We couldn't do something like this on our own, or if we did, we would have a lot of stumbling points. So I just wanted to add that, and I appreciate being able to do so. Thank you.
Thank you, Erin. All right, with that, we'll take George Kladnick.
I'm George Kladnick. I've been a member of the Flagstaff Water Group since 2012. Good afternoon, Mayor and council members. It's a pleasure to be here to address you. Interestingly enough, this morning we had an hour session with the key members of ADAC that are putting together a program for generating regulations for indirect and direct potable reuse. And this is going to be a long process, I want you to understand. It's complicated, and they're looking at a 2-year period, I think, before coming up with any regulations. The fundamental issue, and the thing that the Flagstaff Water Group has been concerned about for years, is contaminants of emerging concern, these synthetic compounds that are made man-made. Most of them are not regulated. And the reason is that no testing has been done. And when the Toxic Substances Control Act was passed in 1976, these chemicals were assumed benign unless proven otherwise in use, unlike pharmaceuticals and food additives and so forth that have to be tested before being released for use to the public. And it's a conundrum. And they understand, we talked about this, setting standards, regulatory standards for contaminant levels for these compounds is impossible because of the testing that's required and understanding the toxicological and epidemiological consequences and potential hazards of them. So what they're looking at, and what the state of California is looking at also, is performance standards. In other words, what are the best methods and technologies that can be used to reduce these to a minimum? And so this is something that's going to take time. No states or US EPA is also working on this, have come up with any regulatory standards. So this is something that's important to understand, but it's also important to understand that these compounds are a serious issue, even though they're not regulated. And I don't want to go into this in any great depth, but I want you to get at least some basic understanding about this. First of all these contaminants that are found in wastewater, and not only in the United States, but in Europe and worldwide, 70% of those that are found in wastewater and biosolids are present in the tissues and the body fluids of people that live in those communities from which they were taken. And this is from large databases in Asia, in the EU, and in the United States.
Thank you, Mr. Kladnick. Appreciate it.
Okay, so the rest, well, you have the rest of what I
Yes,
wanted
it's
to
all,
address here.
Yeah, all on this paper?
Yes.
Excellent.
Yeah, okay. So that's why it's so important that we do use advanced technologies and focus initially on doing reuse, okay? Because of
Absolutely.
lower cost and because of these issues. Okay.
Thank you, Corky. All right, do we have online participants?
Yes.
I will note that there was a request from city attorney to go to executive session in between public participation and when we are discussing with, before we're asking questions and discussing as a council body. So if we could just please hold off on Cs and Qs until after all public participants, that would be great from council.
Thank you, Mayor. I have Ms. Michelle James on the line. Ms. James, would you please address Mayor and Council?
Hello, Mayor, Vice Mayor, and City Council. I'm Michelle James. I'm the Executive Director of Friends of Flagstaff's Future. I want to let you know that FQ fully supports the city's efforts to gain access to federal dollars to assist Flagstaff in determining feasible future water sources. However, we're concerned that funding related to the Red Gap Ranch water supply is being prioritized over funding for direct potable reuse and indirect potable reuse of reclaimed water. We'd like to see funding prioritized and actively pursued for reuse of water over that of Red Gap Ranch water for multiple reasons that are outlined in detail in our letter to you that I sent today. They include cost, water quality, chemicals of concerns, and energy use, things that the Flagstaff Water Group has already talked to you about this afternoon. FQ would like to see the city and council prioritize and actively pursue funding for indirect and direct potable use. And we believe this should be a focus of the city's legislative priorities as well. So FQ met with city staff about this draft letter to the Bureau of Reclamation, and we were told that the city, number one, the city's letter to Bureau of Rec doesn't mean a decision has been made by the city that Red Gap Ranch is a higher priority for future water needs than direct or indirect potable reuse. The letter to BR represents Bureau of Reclamation represents an opportunity for the city to possibly secure federal infrastructure funding to update the Red Gap Ranch feasibility study plan. 3, the city has not yet made the decision to pursue pumping and construction of a pipeline from Red Gap Ranch to Flagstaff. That decision will be made at a later date when more information is available about both the feasibility of Red Gap Ranch and indirect and direct potable reuse. And 4, the city plans to study all alternatives for future water supply equally and is actively seeking federal infrastructure funding for potable reuse as soon as those feasibility studies can be conducted. So I just wanted to point those out to you because it seems to be in conflict with what was in the white paper that was added to the council's agenda point for this agenda item. So FQ respectfully requests that council actively follow the actions the city takes to secure funding for future water supply sources beyond that of Red Gap Ranch. Your diligence is required to ensure that equal priority is given to funding for feasibility studies for water reuse in the next few years, so the city is not relying solely on the problematic and expensive water from Red Gap Ranch. Thank you.
Thank you. And that was our last participant, and per city attorney's request, I move to go into executive session.
I'll second.
Seconded by Councilmember McCarthy. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? That carries unanimously. I will see you upstairs. All right, we are still on agenda item 8E, our consideration approval of letter, notice of interest and participation of bipartisan legislation for rural water development. And we are done with the public participation section, and I'll open this up for discussion and additional questions from council. All right, Councilmember McCarthy.
Okay, Aaron, I kind of alluded to this before, but this statement that water efficiency and reuse efforts prolong the city's existing water resources, but do not create a new water source that are necessary. I kind of fumbled those words, but you know what I'm talking about. So I'm hoping that sometime in the near future, you can maybe send us a memo to council or something that kind of substantiates that statement. Okay, and what I would like to do is add a phrase and a sentence to this letter. And Stacy, I can give you my handwritten version afterwards, so you don't have to write this all down. So looking at the letter on the first page, second sentence in the first paragraph, I would like to add, because this talks about what we're asking for, add, and feasibility funding for potable water reuse. And then at the end of the second to last paragraph, I would like to add a sentence. We also request assistance with a feasibility study for potable water reuse. So I think that kind of is alluded to in the letter, but I think it would be good to kind of beef that up a little bit and stress it a little bit. It doesn't really change the letter, you know. It's basically a letter to try to get funding to do feasibility analysis. And I think this is consistent with that. So that's my proposal. And when we get down to motions, I can do that formally.
Thank you, Councilmember McCarthy. City Attorney.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Sterling Solomon, City Attorney. If the council by motion is going to seek to amend the letter in any way, I would just, from a legal perspective, appreciate it if you could include in that motion that the letter is approved contingent upon legal's review and approval of that language after some additional research to make sure that the language will not present any issues from a legal perspective. Just fair note for anybody who may propose any other amendments, council. Thank you.
We can do that.
Thank you, City Attorney. Councilmember Shimoni has a question.
Thank you, Mayor. Aaron, my question is for you as well. I'm curious on the first page of the white papers, the reuse option section speaks to additional water reuse for Flagstaff will not resolve the water shortfall that occurs in the future. Can you talk to that a little bit and share any data points that might back that up?
Mayor, Councilmember Shimoni, I'd be glad to. I'll try to present this simply, just by sharing some data that exists in our annual report to the Water Commission. Flagstaff, the community uses roughly 8,000 acre feet of water a year. Wastewater treats about, I believe Jim Uckel is on, but I think about 6,000 acre feet a year. And we return unused reclaimed water to the Rio de Flag from anywhere from about 3,000 acre feet a year to 4,000 acre feet a year. So if we were to do DPR today, we'd be recycling about half of the water we deliver to the community. Therefore, we need 8,000 acre feet of water to generate 4,000 acre feet for direct potable reuse. We're not creating new water, so we're still drawing down our aquifer or providing surface water in order to provide the 8,000 acre feet. This is why we need additional water in the future, so we can be careful to not withdraw too much water from our local aquifers. We've defined what is sustainable withdrawal, and why we need additional groundwater in the future is to continue to feed that recycling process. I have a slide that demonstrates that as well in terms of confirmation of those numbers from the Arizona Department of Water Resources in our designation of adequate water supply. So I could bring those numbers up. That demonstrates future groundwater is needed. They consider the sustainability of the resource. The Department of Water Resources does not at this time have direct potable reuse as part of how that supply can fit into a portfolio of water. So Red Gap is still necessary for our designation of adequate water supply. So I hope those kind of two pieces of information is helpful, Councilmember Shimoni, in just doing some basic accounting on the need for additional supply in the future.
Okay, thank you, Aaron. That is helpful. Yeah, I have a bunch of thoughts, but I think I'll leave it there for now. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Shimoni. Councilmember McCarthy?
So Aaron, it sounds like if you had potable reuse, it would increase in very round numbers the amount of water that we have by about 50%. So we could grow quite a bit. Now, if we grow more than that, we would need more than that. It also occurs to me that we might stop providing water for snowmaking. Other uses that are of less value to the community. And I also understand that there's long-term contracts, but we're talking long-term issues here. So I just throw that up.
Not only would we have to end those contracts, but we would still need to either provide water for outdoor uses, such as golf courses or schools, parks, et cetera, or we would say no outdoor water use. So those are kind of the decisions that could be made in the future. With direct potable reuse, a consideration is we need redundancy and in our water supplies. If the direct potable reuse process is compromised and they have to turn off that water supply to the community, we need backup supplies. And we don't want to harden our supplies such that we don't have flexibility. So resiliency and redundancy is a big component of Red Gap Ranch. Just like on the power side, which is another reason why, through Red Gap Ranch feasibility, we could potentially bring in important power sources that help with our climate resiliency goals.
Thank you. Vice Mayor?
Thank you, Mayor. First of all, thank you, Councilmember McCarthy, for your proposed amendments to the letter. Pending legal's review of it, I'm also in support of adding that language. And Aaron, can you add your presentation to the agenda materials? Just so they're available for the public, and yeah, because really informative. So thank you.
I'm glad it's informative, and I got the thumbs up from Stacy, our city clerk, that we can add that.
Thank you. I'd also like to support Councilman McCarthy's amendments to this. We need to see all options, have all options on the table, particularly as we start up with the water master plan for the community. I just want to note that Red Gap Ranch was purchased in 2005, or voter approved in 2005, and we do have an obligation to fulfill what the voters asked of the council to do. And though we need to definitely, and I'm extremely interested in the new technology coming out, all the new developments, how the regulations are changing to allow for direct potable water and indirect potable water, that also that potable water will be affecting Flagstaff. The Red Gap Ranch has a regional impact, and to be good neighbors and to understand that this is a larger picture for the region as well is an important factor in this. But again, I don't think that's an either or situation. This is something where as we do a master plan, we need to have feasibility and funding for feasibility for direct potable use. We need feasibility for what Red Gap Ranch would look like. And therefore, yes, I'm in support of Councilmember McCarthy's amendment. Councilmember Aslan.
I am also in support of Councilmember McCarthy's amendment. Thank you for putting the thought into that and making that language available to us. I think it's an appropriate step for us to make forward. And I just want to take a moment also to thank the public. I want to thank the Water Group specifically and F Cubed specifically for being engaged on this topic. Really appreciate you taking your personal time and your personal passions and efforts and skill sets and being here with us to work through some of these challenges and to bring voice to the concerns that you have. And just really appreciate your advocacy. Just wanted to take a moment to acknowledge that. And if we had more citizens like you coming forward with all topics under the sun, we would be making a lot more progress and coming to a lot more just really well thought out solutions to problems long before now. So thank you for your time and your efforts and your energy, and I hope that you feel heard.
Thank you, Councilmember Aslan. Is there any other council members? Oh, Sterling has a comment.
Thank you, Mayor. Mayor and Council, just going back to the Vice Mayor's comment as far as adding the numbers that Aaron just shared and where the numbers, adding them to the agenda from a procedural perspective. I don't know that we can add them to the agenda, but we can definitely get them in the minutes. I'll work with Stacy on that as far as how best to do so. Maybe we can add them to the agenda. We'll see. But in discussing possible amendments, I know Councilmember McCarthy has put one forward. It wouldn't hurt either to include, from a legal perspective, those numbers in the letter where appropriate to support what Aaron has just presented. So if you wanted to include that in the motion as well, it wouldn't hurt.
Yeah, Councilmember McCarthy.
I'd probably not to add that into the motion or into this letter. I think if we updated the white paper at some point, then we maybe could add it into the white paper. But I don't think this needs to be added into the letter that goes to the Bureau of Reclamation. That's my opinion.
Thank you. Councilmember Shimoni, you have a comment?
Yeah, I just wanted to voice my support for Councilmember McCarthy's edits, but I guess I'll have the opportunity to do that when we vote on it. Thank you.
All right. City Manager.
Thank you, Mayor. It's just a suggestion, but on the topic, since if we still have the gentleman from the Bureau of Rec, maybe we can ask him if he would give us a quick opinion on these amendments. At least we can hear that on the front end and then have it subject to legal review later.
Thank you. Great idea. Mr. Black.
Yeah, Mayor, Vice Mayor, members, council, the edits are certainly appropriate as it defines a broader opportunity for technical assistance or for our attention to those elements. Indeed, our programs cover virtually all that's been described here this evening. So the statistics with respect to the numbers are not necessarily required, but indicating that there is a desire to look at this broader array of water resource management opportunities is very helpful.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
And that's a beautiful picture of downtown Phoenix behind you there.
Yeah.
All right. With that, Councilmember McCarthy, if you'd like to make a motion.
I move that council approves the letter as presented in the packet this evening, subject to two changes, which I'll read here in a second, and subject to legal review of the amended letter. In other words, the letter will not be sent out until it's been approved by our legal department. And the specific changes are at the first paragraph, at the end of the second sentence, add, and feasibility funding for potable water reuse. And then the second change is to add a sentence at the end of the second to last paragraph, which will say, we also request assistance with a feasibility study for potable water reuse. That's my motion.
I will second that motion. Is there any further discussion? And I'll just note that because we're done procedurally with public participation section, unfortunately, we can't have you come up at this time. With the motion on the table, any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? That motion carries unanimously. We are now down to agenda item 9A of our routine items. This is the consideration and adoption of ordinance number 2022-06, an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Flagstaff authorizing the City of Flagstaff to accept a donation of 0.29 acres of vacant land along the west side of Schweitzer Canyon Drive, parcel number 101-29-050, tract E. Delegating authority to complete the transaction, providing for repeal of conflicting ordinances, severability, authority clerical corrections, and establishing an effective date. Staff recommended action is to read ordinance number 2022-06 by title only for the final time. Mr. Doty. Good. Oh, I think your mic is off.
Oh, first time actually in the dais. It's exciting. Bryce Doty, real estate manager. No new information for this one, but happy to address any questions you may have. Thanks.
Thank you. Any questions, council? With that, I move to ordinance number 2022-06 by title only for the final time.
I'll second.
Seconded by Councilmember Sweet. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. City Clerk.
An ordinance of the City Council of the City of Flagstaff authorizing the City of Flagstaff to accept a donation of 0.29 acres of vacant land along the west side of Schweitzer Canyon Drive, parcel number 101-29-050, tract E, delegating authority to complete the transaction, providing for repeal of conflicting ordinances, severability, and authority for clerical corrections, and establishing an effective date.
I move to adopt ordinance number 2022-06.
I'll second.
Seconded by Councilmember Sweet. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? That carries unanimously. Agenda item 9B is the consideration and adoption of ordinance number 2022-05, an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Flagstaff amending the Flagstaff zoning map to rezone approximately 13.49 acres of real property generally located at 5531 East Cortland Boulevard, a portion of APN 113-37-001E, from the highway commercial, light industrial open, and research and development zones to the high-density residential zone with conditions providing for severability, authority for clerical corrections, and establishing an effective date. Staff recommended action is to read ordinance number 2022-05 by title only for the final time.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. Tiffany Antal, Planning and Development Services here. If you have any questions, do not have an updated presentation. I do have the previous presentation if you need any more information.
Thank you. Any questions, council? With that, happy to entertain a motion. Councilmember Salas.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Two weeks ago, when we had this public hearing and we approved this on first read, I had asked the developer to put together numbers in terms of quantifying the total dollar amount value of the additional cost for voluntary contributions. And I appreciate the developer sending that to council, but for the public's information, I invite, if I may, Mr. Mayor, I invite the applicant to articulate the additional cost for voluntary contributions in dollar amounts, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Salas.
Good evening, Council, Mayor, and Council members. Charity Lee, Land Acquisition and Development Manager for Miramonte Homes. So we did go through an extensive exercise and received actual bids to determine what the additional contributions were. And as if you recall in my presentation a couple weeks ago, I mentioned that there were a variety of items that we had voluntarily agreed to contribute for the city of Flagstaff. So I'll just kind of go through these, and one of them would be the concrete foot. So we could have done an aggregate trail. The city staff had really encouraged us to do a concrete trail. And so the difference between an aggregate and a concrete trail is approximately around $110,000 an additional cost to our project. And we also talked about off-site sewer. So as part of our project, we were going to have to do about half a mile of off-site sewer and upsize from a 8-inch to a 10-inch. That was approximately going to cost us around $786,000 to add that to the project. We were going to add an additional EV space. The code required 3 for anything over 100 parking spaces. So we were going to do 4 EV-ready spaces. So that one additional space is approximately $17,500 in addition. And then we would be adding 2 EV-ready stations, which is approximately $24,000 added. We're also going to be adding 8 covered bike parking, which is about $12,000 additional to the project. And then doing a sustainable development, which I mentioned would be Energy Star rated, as well as all the additional sustainable elements that we'd be adding to our project. That's over $710,000. So additional costs of construction, we're looking at over $1,660,968. And so that's an additional construction cost. We would also be adding affordable housing incentive of 14 units, which is a reduction in rents of approximately $137,520 per year for 30 years, which amounts to approximately over $4 million in reduction in rent. So total contributions to this project is over $5.7 million.
Thank you for that information. Councilmember Salas.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just want to point out, and thank you, Ms. Lee, for sharing that to the public. I just want to point out that the construction costs are our estimates for today, and it will likely increase in 3 months, 6 months, or a year, which is we're looking at, a conservative guesstimate of a 30% increase in construction costs when this project breaks ground. Thank you. Thank you so much.
All right. With that, any further questions, council? We're ready for a motion.
I move that we read ordinance 2022-05 by title only for the final time.
I have that a motion from Councilmember McCarthy, seconded by Councilmember Sweet. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? The motion carries unanimously. City Clerk.
An ordinance of the City Council of the City of Flagstaff amending the Flagstaff zoning map to rezone approximately 13.49 acres of real property generally located at 5531 East Cortland Boulevard, APN 112-37-001E, from the Highway Commercial HC, Light Industrial Open LIO, and Research and Development RD zones, with a Resource Protection Overlay RPO to the High Density Residential HR zone with a Resource Protection Overlay RPO, providing for severability, authority for clerical corrections, and establishing an effective date.
I move to adopt ordinance 2022-05.
A motion by Councilmember McCarthy,
I'll second.
seconded by Councilmember Sweet. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? That carries unanimously. We're down to agenda item 10A. This is the consideration and adoption of resolution number 2022-08, a resolution of the Flagstaff City Council authorizing the execution of a development agreement between the City of Flagstaff and Mangini and Selna Children's Irrevocable Living Trust and Miramonte Holdings LLC for the lofts at Continental related to the development of approximately 13.49 acres of real property generally located at 5531 East Cortlandt Boulevard and establishing an effective date. Staff recommended action is to read resolution number 2022-08 by title only.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. I have put up on the screen the slide from last presentation just to cover what's included in that development agreement. And if you have any questions, I'd be happy to try to go over those. There have been no changes since that draft item was presented previously.
Thank you. Councilmember McCarthy.
So one of our city goals is to provide more housing. How many units will this provide?
14.
14?
14 affordable units,
No, I mean total.
139.
Yeah, I thought that was more like it, 139. Thank you.
I was getting confused there. It'd be quite a downsize. That happened. All right. Well, with that, any questions or happy to entertain a motion from council? Councilmember Salas.
Mr. Mayor, I move to read resolution number 2022-08 by title only.
Motion by Councilmember Salas. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Seconded by Vice Mayor Daggett. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Those opposed? That carries unanimously. City Clerk.
A resolution of the Flagstaff City Council, Arizona, authorizing the execution of a development agreement between the City of Flagstaff, Mangini and Selena Children's Irrevocable Living Trust and VP 66 and Miramonte Holdings LLC for the lofts at Continental related to the development of approximately 13.49 acres of real property generally located at 5531 East Cortlandt Boulevard and establishing an effective date.
I move to adopt resolution number 2022-08.
Vice Mayor.
I'll second.
Councilmember Salas, a motion seconded by Vice Mayor Daggett. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Those opposed? That carries unanimously. Moving right along here. All right. Item 10B is the consideration and adoption of resolution number 2022-10, a resolution of the Flagstaff City Council approving the 2022 Cooperative Fire Rate Agreement, CFRA, intergovernmental agreement between the Arizona Department of Forestry and Fire Management and the City of Flagstaff. Staff recommended action is read resolution number 2022-10 by title only.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Paul Trogi, Wildland Fire Battalion Chief, here to answer any questions.
Thank you. Any questions regarding the IGA, Council? Not saying any, so I move to read resolution number 2022-10 by title only.
I'll second.
Seconded by Councilmember Sweet. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? That carries unanimously. City Clerk.
A resolution of the Flagstaff City Council approving the 2022 Cooperative Fire Rate Agreement, CFRA, intergovernmental agreement between the Arizona Department of Forestry and Fire Management and the City of Flagstaff.
Thank you. I move to adopt resolution number 2022-10.
I'll second.
Seconded by Councilmember Sweet. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? That carries unanimously. We are down to our future agenda item requests, and the 11A is a request by Councilmember Salas to place on a future agenda a discussion to consider hazard pay across the board and continuing with premium pay for law enforcement. Councilmember Salas.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I initially brought this concept at our two-day budget retreat at the beginning of February, wearing the hat of the city as an employer to its staff. So the intent is to retain our existing staff, as well as continue with premium pay for our police and fire officers. So just a quick background. Hazard pay, it's defined by the Federal Labor Standard Act as an additional pay for performing hazardous duty or work involving physical hardship. Work duty that causes extreme physical discomfort and distress, which is not adequately alleviated by protective devices. However, as the entire globe experienced COVID pandemic, hazard pay has evolved. Brookings Institute has, the research institute has come up with an updated version of hazard pay that includes frontliners, whether they're in the medical field, whether in retail, home improvements, big box retail, and other work groups that are considered as frontline essential workers. And then hazard pay has also evolved to terms that such as hero pay and appreciation pay, which is considered like a one-time bonus for employees working not only in the front lines but pretty much across the board. So, and I have other researchers like for Phoenix and City of Phoenix and other cities in the nation that has adopted some kind of hazard pay for their staff. But tonight, what is needed is 2 additional council members to move this, to support this, to move it forward to a full council discussion.
Thank you, Councilmember Salas. Questions, comments from council?
Oh, if I also may add, additional hazard pay definition includes hazardous tasks or job physically demanding, working around contagious illnesses, tasks in dangerous locations, jobs with extreme distress, including physical, mental, and psychological health, and jobs with extreme physical discomfort.
Thank you. Councilmember Shimoni?
Thank you, Mayor and Councilmember Salas. Thank you for bringing this up. I appreciate where your mind's at, thinking about our employees, especially those on the front lines with some of these more hands-on situations. You know, I guess my comment and my thought is, Councilmember Salas and City Manager, you know, it's like this to me sounds like it could be something that's part of our conversation around the upcoming budget. And maybe that's where this conversation can take place, is when we talk about employee salaries. That to me seems like, my question, you know, is if, you know, like I would like to see how that were to play out through a discussion with our team in regards to employee salaries and the EAC and whatnot. I don't know if a fair is the right approach, I guess is my point. I think that Councilmember Salas, like, to even be more efficient, you know, maybe I'd be curious what the city manager thinks about, you know, having this be part of the conversation at our next budget retreat. But I like the idea. I just want to know from our team and our HR department especially, how does this fit and what are their thoughts, and ideally have the EAC weigh in on this as well. I'll leave it at that, Mayor, but City Manager, if you have any comments, if you're able to jump in, I'm curious what your thoughts are.
Thank you, Councilmember Shimoni. Clifton?
Thank you. Enjoyed the songbirds in the background, council member. I'm thinking finches, but I'm not sure. I want to start by thanking you, Councilmember Salas, for bringing this forward. It shows a lot of thoughtfulness for our employees, and I know council embodies that as a whole. So thank you for the request. I do think there might be wisdom to having us address this maybe within the context of the budget process. We have more retreats to have in April, 2-day retreat. The budget team, just so you know, has been wrestling a lot with the premium pay component. I know you're asking for a couple of things here. There's two things, hazard pay and premium pay. We could address these topics in a retreat format. I want to be respectful of the fair request, so if you want to keep that on the books, we can do that. But I also think, to Councilmember Shimoni's suggestion, we can come back with some staff input on this in the budget process.
Thank you. And I agree. I think it would be more efficient and quicker just by the long list of fairs we have. I mean, this would probably be showing up a long time from now. And if we want to act on it, then it would be probably better here in a couple weeks to have it with the budget session.
So to sum up, we will keep it as a fair item. You guys can decide, the council can decide, pardon me, if you want to move forward with the discussion in a more formal process. We can keep that in the queue. I'm just suggesting in the meantime, we will plan on having the discussion in the budget context, and it may dispense with the need of the fair eventually.
Councilmember Salas?
We do, procedurally, we still need to keep it as a fair item. That means 2 additional council members need to support this moving forward to keep it in the queue, so we don't lose track of it.
Yeah, if you would like, yes. We have a number of fair items that probably a similar comment could be shared with that. They may be addressed anyway, but it's okay to keep this in its complete form with all the items included.
Yeah, we would need more council members' support to see this through. So if there are council members, please speak up. Shimoni, you have a comment.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. I just want to state that I'm going to be voting for this fair item, knowing that's going to be coming. I trust city manager and our team are going to vet this and bring it forward to us at the budget retreat. And I think that's going to be a much more effective and direct way to handle this. And I don't necessarily feel like we need to have this on the fair list just to have it there. I think we're going to be able to address it. So I just wanted to stick that. Thank you. Councilmember Salas, your work in bringing this forward. It means a lot to me, and I know it means a lot to our team.
Thank you, Councilmember Shimoni. Any others?
I mean, just also
Councilmember
procedurally, Mr. Mayor, we are not voting.
Yeah, this is not a vote, it's
We're
just
building
direction.
consensus.
Yeah. I'm not seeing any further comments, so it doesn't look like we have council direction to move this forward as a fair, but I do look forward to the conversation during our budget sessions to this effect. With that, we are down to my future agenda item request. It's request by Mayor Deasy to place on a future agenda a discussion regarding the development of an only dig once policy to allow for other utilities to participate in projects. So only dig once policy typically has been a big way that other cities have expanded their broadband network. Because whenever somebody digs a hole in the ground, we would have a policy where we can lay down conduit. We can check our water pipes. We can collaborate more thoroughly with our utility partners, so that way we can, save quite a bit of money. As we know, infrastructure costs are going up and up and up, and excavation costs are going up and up and up. So the ability to have a policy that coordinates our efforts has been found in a lot of cities to be working well, and in fact, mayors, council members, city attorneys across Arizona have been discussing this and collaborating to see what we can do to form this policy. And it has several benefits, as we know, that of cost savings, increased access to and reliability of broadband networks. It also helps with our transportation. As we know, we'll sometimes see one entity dig up one of our right-of-ways, and then a year later, 2 years later, we're digging up the same hole for another project. If it's APS one day and then water the next day or next year. So I'm asking council to put forward a discussion about this that we can see what other cities are doing. We don't need to reinvent the wheel here. Other Arizona cities are in the process, and it would be a great way to reduce our infrastructure costs and use the taxpayer monies more efficiently. And I'm happy to hear what others think. Councilmember McCarthy?
Well, Mayor, I think this idea absolutely makes sense, but I just question if we really need to formalize a policy on it. It would seem that administratively, this is something the city manager could do. I don't know if the city manager has any thoughts on that. Do you need a formal policy from council, or can you just, through internal management, make a decision that we're going to cooperate and dig once, like the mayor suggests?
Well, thank you. Unlike the previous fair, where I was able to speak to it with some familiarity as we've been chatting about it with the budget team, on this one, I do not have that familiarity. I would maybe invite Scott Overton or anybody from our Public Works team to speak to this, or Water Services. My hunch is it's going to take a little bit of research at the staff level, but I don't want to speak out of turn. I would invite others to chime in here if they have an opinion.
If I may, Mr. Mayor, if my memory serves me right, I have heard that the city or our transportation partners have, in terms of staff, because of my role with Metroplan as well, I have heard a while back, as early as 3 years ago, that we have such a policy of a dig once policy. I don't know if it's a city ordinance or it is iterated somewhere, because I remember encountering it in our Metroplan meetings. I remember encountering it in some of our council meetings, the dig once policy.
Yes, it's informal, but a formal process would allow for particular coordination and systems set up. For example, mutually having a GIS system with our utility partners that would then allow us to see certain projects that are going on now or in the future, or provide a more formal manner of communicating and collaborating and long-term planning on where we're going to put conduit, rather than now where it's like, oh, hey, we're digging a hole over here. Well, we don't have the staff time to go over there right this second and be so reactive. We have to be proactive with our only dig once, and that's why a formal policy is much better than just having a informally saying, hey, yeah, we communicate with each other. But that's not always the case. I mean, how many times do we see the roads dug up multiple times on the same stretch? So this formalizes communications, and whether it's a requiring even, that's where some ordinances are going with this, which would also mean coordinating between private entities as well to be the most efficient possible for all of those involved, not just for city wanting to throw down some conduit. Councilman Rasland.
Thank you, Mayor. I think that this concept makes a lot of sense. I'm willing to keep the ball moving forward on this, so I'll support it moving forward.
Thank you. And this giving direction now would also allow us to get the homework done from staff in a timely manner, because, we do have the infrastructure law coming into effect. We are talking bonds for this fall. This is going to be an important part of the discussion, and also all of us being informed on how these things are being done in other cities and the benefits and costs of doing so. So I'm just asking that we can get directions so staff would dedicate some time to doing a little research into this. Councilmember Sweet?
I support this moving forward. It sounds like this could be a lot of savings for us and increase our efficiency, so I'm all for it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Sweet. And that does give 3, so I appreciate it. Agenda item 12 now is public participation. Do we have anyone on the line? That is negative. So we are down to agenda item 13, our informational items, 2 from mayor, council, and staff, and future agenda item requests. I'll start on this end with Councilmember Salas.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would invoke my privileged speech as peoples around the world suffer from war, terror, violence, injustice, inequality, poverty, hatred, indifference, and apathy. I share this non-denominational prayer in humble supplication. It's called Credo, where justice will flourish, and author unknown. I believe in God, the parent of us all, who has given the earth to all people. I believe in Jesus Christ, who came to encourage us and to heal us, to deliver us from oppressors, to proclaim the peace of God to all. He has given himself to the world. The Lord lives among all people. He is among us, the living God. I believe in God's Spirit, who works in every man and woman of goodwill. I believe in the church, called to be a light for all nations, urged by the Spirit to serve all people. I believe that God will finally destroy the power of sin in all of us, and that all will share God's everlasting life. I do not believe in the right of the strongest, nor the force of arms, nor the power of the oppressors and dictators and terrorists. I want to believe in human rights, in the solidarity of all people, and the power of nonviolence. I do not believe in racism, in wealth, privilege, or the established order. I want to believe that all women and men are equal, and that order based on violence and injustice is not order. I do not believe that I can fight oppression if I tolerate injustice. I want to believe that there is but one right everywhere, that I am not free if even one person remains enslaved and oppressed. I do not believe that war and hunger are inevitable and peace unattainable. I want to believe in the beauty of simplicity, in love with open hands, in genuine peace on earth in our time. I do not believe that all suffering is in vain, nor that our dreams will remain but dreams, nor that death is the end. I dare to believe, always and in spite of everything, in a new humanity, in God's own dream of a new heaven, which is a new earth, where genuine peace will flourish because there is justice. Thank you.
Councilmember Sweet?
Thank you, Councilmember Salas. And I have nothing further than those words. Thank you.
Councilmember McCarthy.
I just point out that the mayor and Councilmember Shimoni and I had a meeting with Representative Blackman this morning, and we talked. I'll let the other council members say what they talked about, but I talked about the need for short-term rental, some control on that, which we've talked about, so I won't belabor that. It was a good meeting. I just make a quick statement here. The bullying that's going on in Ukraine right now is absolutely unacceptable.
Thank you, Councilmember McCarthy. Vice Mayor?
Nothing from me. Thank you.
Okay, Councilmember Shimoni?
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Councilmember Salas, for your words and your passion. I really do feel for the people of Ukraine and the people of Russia and all people who are struggling, really, but especially those today. So just a couple things. Yeah, we, as Councilmember McCarthy said, we had a good conversation with Representative Blackman, and I just want to state publicly, thanking him for his time today and allowing us to speak to him on a whole range of topics. The topic I spoke to was minimum wage and the concerns with what the state is proposing in regards to minimum wage. And yeah, I'll leave it at that. This week, I have a meeting with the Sunshine Transportation Solutions Group, and I look forward to kind of learning more about that. But I know that this council already weighed in on that topic, but I'm going to just learn a little bit more about what they got going on. And then this Wednesday, there's a community relations board meeting through Working Alternatives. And if you're not familiar with this group, I highly recommend checking them out. And council members, if you want to join this meeting, it's from 1 to 2:30 p.m. Reach out to Catherine Esquivel at Working Alternatives. And then the CJCC Executive Committee has a special session meeting this Thursday from 9 to 11 a.m. And I do believe those meetings are open to the public. And I look forward to learning more about what that means going to be discussing. And then next Tuesday, I will be attending the Children's Funding Institute conference with Elevate Pre-K to learn more about long-term funding solutions and sustainable approaches to what we're trying to pull off here in Northern Arizona. Good meeting tonight. Thank you all. And yeah, have a great evening.
Thank you, Councilmember Shimoni. Councilmember Aslan, nothing for tonight. Yeah, well, to add on about, Representative Blackman this morning, I spoke to the Museum Fire Flood Scars and the ongoing needs of our community, and thanking himself and the state for their funding that allowed us to buy an excavator as well as a sweeper and other equipment that we desperately need here for our community. And I also spoke to broadband expansion. Surprise, surprise. We had a good discussion, and there's good things in the works at the federal and state level in several of these regards we've been stating. Aside from that, just mention that on Friday, this is the Arizona Mayor's Education Roundtable that we will be discussing specifically attainable housing for our teachers around the state and how different cities are troubleshooting those issues, as we sure as heck ain't the only ones. That's for darn sure. Aside from that, happy to announce that the State of the City address has been rescheduled for Monday at 5 p.m. And I'm looking forward to also Congressman O'Halloran will be joining us. And just want to invite anyone who is interested to please come to the front of City Hall at 5 o'clock, where we can address a lot of the issues that we have prioritized as a city council, a lot of the successes, challenges, and how we will be, how we're moving forward. So thank you for that, and that ends it for this evening. Or unless city manager has something.
No, thank you, Mayor.
All right, thank you. Meeting adjourned.